So let's move on to our final topics. Downtown revitalization has been a topic that has interested a lot of people recently. Wichita city officials have interviewed consultants and planners as they continue an effort to bring more life to Wichita's core area. But are these efforts at the expense of the citizen, and are they in vain? Bob Weeks of Voice for Liberty and wichitaliberty.org joins us now. Bob, you've had a lot to say about this over the past couple of years, in fact, and in fact you spoke with the council this week. Bob, let me just ask, what is so wrong with the city trying to improve the downtown area? Why is that a bad thing?
Well, as I mentioned to the council members when I spoke to the council on Tuesday, that to me it's an issue of economic freedom, broadly construed, that when the city council pours millions, and it will be millions of taxpayer dollars into downtown, then that takes money away from people who want to make their own choices. And you know, the mayor and the others, they want downtown developed. I don't really know why, Tim, but when people have spent their own money, most people don't want to live downtown or in the core city. They prefer what they call the perimeter areas, and of course business follows them. But that, to me, represents people making their own free economic choice as opposed to this coerced decision to go downtown. And it really hasn't worked out that well also as well. We've got the Water Walk project, which so far has consumed $41 million of public subsidy, and there's really not much to show for that, and prospects, I don't think, are looking very bright for that either. So it's really puzzling to me as to why all of a sudden they think that they can now do it right. Of course, they've got a planning firm that we're bringing in, so I might say, well, if a planning firm's necessary, why didn't we have a planning firm before we spent the $41 million on Water Walk and all the other public subsidy that's gone into downtown as well? So it's puzzling to me as to why we think we can make this work now.
You know, Randy, we spoke a little bit before the program about this as well, and you've got some different opinions than Bob does on this, and you're a little bit more in favor of the city's efforts.
Well, I think it's people. There's not much institutional memory in this city or many other cities, and people have sort of forgotten that the city of Wichita spent hundreds of millions of dollars subsidizing the suburban developments that Bob's talking about, building roads and bridges and infrastructure so that folks could rush out to the suburbs and waste a lot of time commuting instead of helping to rebuild the core. Now, do we need suburbs? Sure, that's fine, and areas around the city. But the whole thrust after World War II was to build out away from the core area. And none of these developments, you know, it's not like the private developers paid for it themselves. Mm-hmm. The city financed it. The taxpayers financed this flight to the burbs. And now it seems to be logical to me that we should concentrate at least a little of our money, and it ain't much money really, considering the whole city budget, on downtown redevelopment. Downtown, to me, is the heart and soul of a community. If you don't have a good downtown, a vibrant downtown, all you've got is a series of neighborhoods, people living in their suburban enclaves, and whose interests don't go any further than the end of their driveway or the next main street over. To be a community, we've got to have things we share, things we do in common, things we do together. And that's what a downtown is for. It's not going to be the retail center of Wichita anymore. That's all history. But it can be the place where we come together as a community. And I think Bob's right. I mean, the city's bungled the Water Walk development horribly. It all started when Carlos Mayans was mayor, and he held up the project and caused us not to get the Bass Pro Shops, which we could have had down there, which is obviously a tourist draw and a good draw. And the city's bungled along for years. I think, not by being too aggressive, but by not being aggressive enough. We need to focus, take this plan, and go forward.
Well, you know,
dynamically.
Maybe you're making a point. Maybe you're making one of Bob's points here. I think this is the concern with a lot of people, is the fact that here we go again. You know, the city's going to throw dollar after dollar after dollar after this, and it's your dollars, my dollars, Bob's dollars. And we're just going to have another failed project. You know, the Water Walk is an example, and I know there will be Water Walk people that will email me after this and say it's not a failed project, they're still moving along and everything, but you know, you can drive by it and there hasn't been a lot of progress. And they'll point to Old Town, and you know, Old Town has some great things, but we also just subsidized the theater down there. We gave a no interest, or at least for a period of time, loan to the theater down there, and people complain about that. Is that kind of the crux of your argument, Bob? I mean, is the government, the city government, just can't get it right?
Well,
Or do you think it's not worth doing at all?
that's to some of it. You know, Lavonda Williams the other day, a city council member, said, well, when I was a teacher in a junior high school, I had a plan, and we have to plan this downtown. But my contention would be is that planning downtown is simply beyond the realm of the possible, I think. And certainly for a government, which the incentives are much different than the private markets provide, it's really impossible. I want to back up a minute, though, because I just have to disagree with Randy, because, you know, if you look at suburban developments, Tim, those developers get socked with all sorts of infrastructure costs. You know, I've done the research, and I look at on North Webb Road, there's a developer, and the city decides, well, we need to have a traffic signal here. So the property owners have to pay $160,000 for that. And, you know, we're going to do some research about downtown, and we're going to find, I'm pretty sure, Tim, that downtown developers don't get socked for their infrastructure. You know, the Waterwalk condominiums downtown, they pay no special taxes. Anybody who built something like that in a suburban area, like my house I built about 8 years ago, I'm carrying, I think, $16,000 of special taxes to build the street and the sewer and so forth for my house. So, you know, I think this myth that the suburban areas are highly subsidized is simply that.
I couldn't disagree more. I think I mean, it's obvious we've spent hundreds of millions of dollars getting people out to where I live, which is the Willow Bend area and far west Wichita, and we're building freeways around the city. And not only does this waste our time and our money, it wastes our human resources. The time we spend driving back and forth to work, making all these long commutes, coming in from Newton or wherever, is time taken away from our family, our community, the ability to do public service, work with our churches and civic organizations. And it's just, I would argue that the way that cities are constructed in America today is really a terrible folly and a waste of our democratic resources.
But see, Randy, let me play devil's advocate with you, because I think this is partially what Bob's saying. Is
we can't all be the devil's advocate.
Yeah,
we can have three.
We can't be. But I think part of it is, you know, we've seen our city planners, you know, with the flight to the suburbs and pushing that years ago, and now they're trying to get everybody back in. And it does seem like we're a little confused as to what we're doing and what direction we're taking.
Bob, in one way, I have to agree with Bob. It is a tough deal to plan in a democracy. Mm-hmm. Let's say you have a 10-year plan for downtown or anything we're going to do in Wichita. There are going to be 5 city elections between now and the next 10 years. The city council may be completely different. The voters may have turned in a different direction. Well, it's very difficult to commit to long-term planning.
And technology factors, you know, 10 years ago the internet was, well, it was established, but barely, it didn't have the impact that it had on people's lives. And like the iPhone that I carry, well, 10 years ago handheld cell phones were, I think, pretty rare. Sure. Now people have a full-fledged computer that they carry around with them. So many things like that change very rapidly, not to mention our economy and globalization and things like that. So it's very difficult to predict these, and you know, governments are just not as well equipped to plan. Remember the downtown arena, when they started making little changes to the plan, a variety of people would say, well, that's not exactly what you promised us when we voted for. But you know, private developers have the flexibility to do that. When governments try to be flexible, then someone's going to say, well, that's not what we agreed to at the very beginning. So you may not end up with optimal situations.
One final thought in
about
a grand philosophical regard. Government is us. And government is us getting together to do things we can't do as private individuals. We can't really do a complete school system or a library system or a police department. I don't want to hire a police department from my Willow Bend neighborhood to go against the police department in Tallgrass. I mean, we're all together on this. So the idea this has to be economically sound, I think, is a fallacy. Downtown is not going to be an economic engine in terms of retail, and it's going to be a community gathering place.
I've got to stop you. We're out of time. Would your police department drive golf carts instead of police cars?
I think I'd have them on those things that, what do you call them? Segways.
Okay.
Segway. Yeah.
All right, we are out of time, guys. Thanks for being on the program. That's all the time we have tonight. If you have any questions or comments about the show, please email me at kansasweek@kpts.org. Thanks for watching. Have a great weekend.